Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, good morning guys. We are from Group 4. In here, we would like to presentation about fiction translation. The first, let me introduce my member. Member of Group 4. The first is Putri Arumjani. Second is Fara Viona Astri. And then Najma Aqilah al-Islami, Jihaan Aqilah, Salsabila Triratna, Aufiena Rahma, and the last, it's me, Sinta Budiyanti. We are from Department of English Education in 4th semester, exactly in morning class. Okay, let's start it.
Okay, let's talk about introduction. Translating literary works, especially comic, is not easy. Translators are faced with the characteristic of comic language and limited space. In addition, translators are also required to be observant in choosing the right translation technique so that all message carried in the search language can be conveyed into the target language. Comic also contain dialogue, which is an important part of the storyline of a comic. In the dialogue, there are speech acts, which are all acts carried out through speaking, which are generally categorized into three types, namely the act of saying something, the illusionary speech act, and act of doing something, and perlocution. Of the three types of the speech act, illusionary speech act are the most important speech act because they are related not only to the meaning of a speech. Illusionary speech act emphasize more on the function and the purpose of a speech. Through the context of situation and cultural context in which illusionary speech act, it can be seen that the function of speech is pronounced.
Next, definition of translating. Jeremy Monday defines translating as an act of communication which attempts to relay across cultural linguistics boundaries, another act of communication which may have been intended for different purposes and different readers. According to this definition, Jeremy Monday has a complex definition about translation. He explained that translation as an act of communication which tries to deliver message across languages and culture with particular purposes and reader. Different from Monday, there is another theory from Newmark which defines translation as a craft consisting in attempt to replace a written language, message or statement in one language by the same message or statement in another language. The definition above shows that translation is transferring the meaning of a source language text by means of an equivalent target language text. Many experts define translation in many ways. However, the core of each is just the same. The elements of translation are source language and target language and equivalency. Next, the translation process according to Nida and Saber. According to Nida and Saber, translation process divided into three stages. The first is analysis, and the second one is transfer, and the third is reconstructing. The first stage is analysis. This is the step of analyzing the source language through linguistics and meaning study. The analysis of the material which is translated and the cultural problem. And the second one is transfer. In this stage, we have to analyze the material are transferred in the translator's mind from source language into target language. And the last is reconstructing. In this stage, the translator rewrites or expresses the translated text until it became a readable and acceptable translation product in terms of rules and styles of target language. Translation process from Suryawinata and Haryanto. According to Suryawinata and Haryanto, the translation process consists of 4 stages. The first is analysis stage or comprehension stage, and the second is transfer stage, third restructure stage, and the last is evaluation and revision stage. Different from Nida, Suryawinata and Haryanto propose a process of translation by adding evaluation and revision stage in the end of their stage. So the first is analysis stage. Each translating activity begins with analyzing of the source language text because of translators always face on the source language text first. Analysis of the source language text is being in reading activity. Next, the reading activity of source language text intended to understand the content of the text. It is impossible a translator can understand the content of the text if he or she doesn't read the text first. In analysis stage, the translator analyzes the sentences based on the grammatical meaning or combination words, textual meaning, and even contextual meaning. Then, transfer stage. After translator can understand the meaning and the structure of the source language, the translator will be able to get the message in. After that, translator will transfer the content, meaning, and the message from the source language into target language. The process takes place in the mind of the translator, and after the content, meaning, and message already exist in the translator's mind, then they express it in target language orally or in writing. The third, restructure stage. The translators continue restructuring by finding out equivalent words, expressions, and sentences structure in the target language correctly to deliver whole content, meaning, and message of the source language. Restructuring is changing of the transfer process by stylistic from the match with target language, the reader or listener. At the restructuring step, a translator needs to pay attention to a variety of language to determine the style of language according to the type of the text to be translated. A translator also needs to pay attention to whom its translation. And the last is evaluation and revision stage. The translator evaluates and revises the target language to get an appropriate meaning with the source language. As far as it is not equivalent, it is possible to revise.
Next, translation and culture. In activity translation and interpreter, it's not just the inter-equivalent target language, but an interpreter also required to divert the message from source language into target language. Surely there is a difference between two. Language are not nomenclature, and the camber of one language might be indistinguishable from those of another. Because language is wrong, one element of the culture assets language difference. Translation activities also faced with culture difference. One of the most difficult problems is proof is found in the records between cultures. Morgan Baker stated that translation is a discipline which has to concern with how vocab generated with an expanded groups of people in cultural settings. Thus, in accordance with opinion and said that activities translation that involves to language cannot expect its influence to culture of towards language is connected, which is the core language culture and targets language culture. Translation and pragmatic. The pragmatic always emphasizes to uncover the meaning of speech. A person should it to context the situation and the cultural context accompanying him. The true meaning of a statement, which is often not visible explicitly in and speech can be expressed in that way. A translator acknowledges in the field the pragmatic will be very helpful. A translator doing his duty. So basically, acting is divided into three, which is speech, speech of skin, and translational speech.
Next is translating comics. In translating comics, the pictures and writings or narrative tell stories is same like describing the whole story of the comics. There is no specific strategy of the translating comics, but in translating comics, a translator must pay attention to the characteristics of the comics. Components say that translating comics is easy, at least it often may seem deceptively so, since language of comic rarely complex or poetic sentence structures, specialized terminology, or highly abstract concepts. However, comic books and comic strips do have certain characteristics that make them much more demanding for translator than one might think. Translator must consider the style of the author and the style of the text. The last is accuracy in translation. Accuracy in translations refers to which the translations conform to the original text. Accuracy of the message delivered between the search language or SL and target language or TL is the essence of accuracy. Accuracy not only in terms of choice of words, but also accuracy of grammatical, meaning equivalence, and pragmatics. 4 classifier rating scale. First is language sentences, goals are clear and don't need to be revision. Second is message in the SL sentence conveyed accurately to the inside TL. Language sentences can be understood, however word order needs to be revised. Third, message in the SL sentence has not been accurately conveyed to in the TL. And fourth, message in the SL sentence not translated at all to in the TL, for example, eliminated.
3.0 Result and Discussion. In this accuracy analysis, the researcher asked the rater for help to assess the translation results by providing a value to the questionnaire that had been provided. If there is a difference between the raters, the researchers discussed the data with raters to agree on the same value based on the parameters provided. If there's no agreement on the same value of a data, the researcher makes a decision by taking into account the parameters or arguments of a strong rater. The results of the questionnaire on 163 data classified as accurate translation 152, less accurate 10, and inaccurate 1. 3.1 Translation Techniques. This study found the use of reduction techniques to be one of the causes of reduced speech accuracy. Diction or word choice is a challenge that will arise when the translation process is carried out. 3.2 Word Selection. Diction or word choice is a challenge that will arise when the translation process is carried out. Examples of incorrect word selection and impact on inaccuracy of translation can be seen as below. Culture Fall 2, number 1, May 2015. SpongeBob. You remember the hook we talked about yesterday? Crabs. You know the hook we talked about yesterday. The translator translates the word remember to know. In this case, it seems that the translator is not very observant in choosing the equivalent word remember. When viewed in the context of the above speech, SpongeBob intends to explain the reason why he came to work to his boss, Mr. Krabs, by reminding him about the hook they talked about earlier. Therefore, it is more appropriate to choose the word know as the equivalent of the word remember, if it's replaced by remember. 3.3. The use of punctuation. In this study also found factors for disadvantage that were inappropriate and resulting in inaccuracies in the translation. Here's an example of the dialogue. SpongeBob: I told you I saw nothing, Patrick. Gee. SpongeBob intended to tell his friend Patrick that he didn't see anything suspicious of the incident that happened to the giant shell. However, in the dialogue that SpongeBob spoke as if SpongeBob spoke to the third parties that he didn't see Patrick.
Fact of fiction translation. The first, translation of fiction is more complicated than the translation of the other genre, as it deals not only with bilingual, but also bicultural and social transference. The second, translation of fiction involves the exchange of the social experience of the individuals in the fictional world with the readers in another culture or society. And the last, translation of fiction depends largely on various factors, including aesthetic, conversation, historical and cultural social circumstances, authorial individualism, and the author's worldview, among which reproductions of the fictional styles is regarded as its core.
Key points. As we know that translation, like most of writing, like most kinds of artistic creation, tends not to expose itself to an audience till it reaches its finished form. So we need to first is keep in touch with the development of the language in society, and then the second, always adjust the language to the target readers, and then the third is achieve that translators are invisible. Conclusions. According to the explanation previous, we can conclude that in this study, the accuracy of translations is due to three things, namely, translation technique. In the matter of accuracy by the selections of translation technique, this research finds the use of reduction techniques is wrong that make cause of reduced levels accuracy of speech. For example, reduction technique applied translator on the word here, causing the loss of part of spoken message in target language. And then the second is word selections. In word selections of the meaning of the word according to the context, the translator have to pay attention of it. Therefore, incorrect in choosing the equivalent of word can result in inaccuracies in the translations. For example, translation translates words remember to know. And then the last is the use of punctuation marks. The use of inaccurate punctuations result in inaccurate translations. For example, translator translate the sentence, I told you I saw nothing, Patrick. Gee. It seems like SpongeBob was talking to the other that he didn't see Patrick, even though he meant to tell Patrick that he didn't see anything suspicious about that happened hit the giant clam. That's all.
Okay, thanks for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.